Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Vista Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivesesa Sonyavari Paschatya Sacharini Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasili Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna. So I have been rarely in Vrindavan over the last so many years, but whenever I came to Vrindavan, I used to talk to Aindra Prabhu, something. And sometimes when he was singing, I was sitting in that kirtan also. So we didn't have so much association, but he appreciated and I appreciated. You know, I'm kind of very different in nature than Aindra. Aindra is an icon in ISKCON, practically speaking. If I would try to think of a verse that fits his character, that verse would be Harinam, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalona Steva, Nastiva, Nastiva, Gati Anitaha. He was the embodiment of that verse. Because that's what he firmly believed. There's no other way, and he didn't try any other way. There are so many ways. But he didn't. He stuck to a simple method of chanting in kirtan and chanting enormous amounts of rounds, worshipping in Srila, and stayed in this little room upstairs on the third floor of the Gurukul, beautifully decorated with cow dung, and his deities were there, and his shelves of Shalagam Shilas. And even in the heat, I cannot even think of it, to do such a thing, to be here in Vrindavan during the hot season. I did it one time, and I made a vow never again. I called a Goodrich company to send me a fridge with a big freezer, and I was sticking my head into the freezer every 10 minutes to freeze my brain, just to survive. But he didn't have this convenience, you know, he was just living a life of a real sadhu. And from his place in Vrindavan, from his room and from his sitting place in front of Krishna Balaram, he has moved the lives of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. Every time they would come into the temple, they heard the kirtan. He established, practically speaking, the 24 hours kirtan. He was the most ardent follower of this principle of holding kirtan for 24 hours. And he had an amazing influence all over the world. Wherever you go, Russia, Brazil, you hear his tapes and you hear his kirtan. He was simple in his dedication. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, the mind is directed towards Krishna. And if that is so, when the mind is directed towards Krishna, then Machita, mind is directed towards Krishna, consciousness is fixed on Krishna. Machita Sarva Durgani, then all difficulties of material life, Mat Prasadam, by Krishna's mercy, Tareshyasi, is destroyed. And he was living by that principle and lived an awesome life of dedication to the holy name of Krishna, his dedication to kirtan and his dedication to japa, chanting Krishna's name on beads. He was the emblem of that. I've never met a person who chanted so much kirtan every day for so many years. I've never met a person who chanted so many rounds as he would. And so in that sense, he was very special. I remember when I came to New York a long time ago, Aindra had a flatbed truck, and he had it was like a rolling temple, beautifully decorated, and he used to drive to Washington Square, set up, and chanted. So many people came and they danced with him. And so he was distributing the holy name big time, even before he came to Vrindavan, big time. Thousands, if not hundreds, thousands of people in New York, which is a dense forest of illusion. In New York, everything goes, no doubt about it. So in that den of Kali Yuga, he started to chant Hare Krishna mantra regularly in different parks. And so it is continued, this tradition is continued. We have Kirtan in Washington Square Park, Thompson Square Park, of course. And in this way, he spread this message of Lord Chaitanya in the Western world. Then he came to the East, he came to Vrindavan, and he made up his mind that I'm going to sit here and chant till I drop. Which he did. He chanted up to the last day, practically speaking. And his departure was unexpected by anybody, and the way was unexpected by everybody. But Krishna has his own way. Nobody can understand Krishna, Krishna's mind. Impossible. Nam prakasha savasya yoga maya samavita. We are too covered. So Krishna has his own way of calling his devotees back to Godhead, his own way. And every death is very different. Every death is very different. Every death is very individual. It is according to the individual nature and rasa of a devotee with Krishna in the spiritual world. Krishna picks up people sometimes from one moment to another. Who would have thought that Aindra would leave? I thought he was going to live for 150 years, considering the service he did and the glorious chanting of the holy name that we can still hear in Krishna Balaram temple by his followers. The style, the particular Aendratic style of chanting the Holy Krishna, the Hare Krishna mantra in bhajan. And you hear it all over the world, wherever you go. Even Bhakti Baba Swami used to chant completely different. I remember I used to travel with him. I've been with him for 20 years or something, but then all of a sudden he arrived here in Vrindavan and he completely changed his style. And now he sings exactly that. He sings hardly any other way. He used to play chords like I do, and he doesn't now. He plays just in Yendra's style. And so we are very blessed by his association that he came to this world to preach and chant, teaching by example. Yad yad ashrati shreshtas. How to chant the holy name, how to chant on japa beads as much as in the temple, how to influence so many people. Yarideka Taka Krishna Upadesh, Krishna said, wherever you go. And he spent his whole life like that. There was no space for anything else. Unalloyed devotional service means there's no space, there is nothing in between. It's just the whole thing from the morning to the evening is one prayer. Even the work, cleaning a room should be prayer, work should be prayer. And so throughout his time he was chanting Hare Krishna, and then one day I heard the news and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard of his sudden demise in the Gurukul. So I'm very grateful, and so we all should be very grateful to Aindra Maharaj that he has set such a wonderful example of chanting God's name, that he has influenced so many people worldwide in chanting God's name and enthused people worldwide by not by talking, but by example, by his own example. His life was, in other words, exemplary. It was an example of Krishna consciousness. Not everybody is the same. People are different. People have different occupations in Krishna consciousness. Some people are just managing because that's in their blood. And some people are doing deity worship. Why? Because it's written in their hand, practically speaking. Some people have been worshipping the deity in Krishna Balaram temple since a long time. But not everybody can do that. I personally can't. I can do a puja, and I do every day my offerings to Krishna, but I'm not a pujari, nor am I really a kirtaniya. But I do something that is according to my nature. As Krishna says, he should follow his own path. And so he, in the same way, Aindra, he followed his own path. And his specialty was what we have seen here in Vrindavan, and which is still reverberating. Every day, the 24 hours kirtan, and I can only honestly say for myself, I'm in awe when I see devotees sitting in kirtan and chanting and chanting and chanting and chanting and chanting. When they finish, they chant and chant and chant and chant. It is an awful example for me. Not awful, it's awesome example for me. So let's be grateful to Aindra Maharaj that he came, that he introduced this kirtan, established his kirtan in Krishna Balaram Mandir. Yam yam vapismaran bhavantya jate antikalevaram tam tame vaiti kauntiya sadatat bhava bhavitaha. Wherever the mind is at the time of death, there you go. And there's no doubt about it that when Aindra died in this fire, that he was thinking of Krishna. He paid obeisances, practically speaking, in front of his deities. That is the perfection of life in Vrindavan. Everybody knows if we die in Vrindavan, we go back to Godhead. But not just being in Vrindavan, by his activity in Vrindavan, his sadhana in Vrindavan, which is awesome. So I thank you so much for coming and listening. And I'm glad you're all here, that we can glorify Aindra Prabhu today on his day of his departure. He left pretty young. How old was he when he left? 58 or something? 58? 58. Huh? Yeah, something like that. He left fairly young. Of course, we can speculate why, but Krishna saw that, if I can speculate, that Krishna thought he has done his work. Why letting him go to the agony of lying in bed with bed sores for months and even years altogether and gradually die away? Rather, Krishna took him from one moment to the other. In the morning he was there, or in the evening he was there, in the morning he was already gone. It's Krishna's way of doing it. Tama Krishna was once left in the same, all of a sudden nobody thought he would leave. I couldn't believe it. This is Krishna's way of bringing people back home, back to Godhead. So I thank you very much. Let us chant Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Sripad Aindra Maharaj Ki.
Prita Prabhu, you were mentioning New York City. Aindra Prabhu was preaching there. He didn't start his kirtan here. Actually, Aindra Prabhu told me he was distributing books, Back to Godhead magazines, for 7 years straight, every day. And any of you who have done book distribution, you know it's not an easy thing. You have to swallow your pride. And if you don't, people will make you swallow it very quickly. But he had the humility to do that. And then when he moved to New York, he had this flatbed truck. It's a truck that's The back of it was completely flat. There's nothing on it. Sorry, it wasn't a flatbed truck. It's like a U-Haul truck that you can open the side doors. So what he has done, as creative as he was, he put in some nice pillars. He painted them gold, and he put up this nice juggernaut cloth on the inside, nice rugs, and put up these good quality speakers, microphone stands, and he had sitar, SRI, harmonium, mudanga, and went out to this cosmopolitan city of New York, Sin City, basically. And he was preaching by the performance of Harinam Sankirtan. Regular basis, 8-10 hours. He would only stop for 5 minutes. And then it wasn't a break from him. He stopped for 5 minutes and then he was preaching about the Holy Name. So, the nature as he had, like I said, I don't know if you know his legal name, although we don't speak about the interior qualities of devotees. But it's a little funny. His legal name was Edward Stryker. So he came with a big bang and he left, he left the big bang also after that. So in New York, he went downtown, he would stop on the sidewalk, open the doors, and there was this temple, this moving mobile temple, and this kirtan coming out of it. And somehow the management was not supporting him because he had a bit of an eccentric personality and he was very opinionated, as we all know. You had to agree with him. And anyway, just without describing that situation at that time, he didn't get any support, so basically he was himself alone. One time my godbrother Subal Prabhu told me that on Christmas marathon time, he wanted to go out and distribute for his Harinam program. And Christmas marathon, that's where you distribute a lot of books. And traditionally in ISKCON we do that. And in New York City, all the big book distributors got all the best spots. But Aindra Prabhu, is just Aindra. He wasn't always the famous big Aindra as he is now. They didn't appreciate him too much. He was strange. To them, he was strange. And so they gave him the worst spot for Christmas in New York, which is Chinatown. Do the math. Chinatown, Christmas, it doesn't match, right? Incompatible. So he was there with my godbrother Subal. He was just Bhakta Caesar back then. And he was trying all day, cold, windy New York City in December, and nobody giving him anything. Practically all these Chinese people looking at him like he's an alien. What is he doing here? Christmas, because he was in I didn't mention, he was in a Santa Claus outfit. Many of you know Ram Roy Prabhu. He used to go out in a Cookie Monster outfit. So that was the old days. So nobody gave him anything. And Aindra Prabhu said, he was very feeling down, right? He needed money for his program, not for himself, but for the truck and the maintenance. He had plans and ideas. And he needed a certain budget for that. And this is the best opportunity of the year to collect money because during Christmas everybody's soft-hearted, it's Jesus, etc., kind-hearted. But he couldn't make any. And so as they were going home at the end of the day, it's already dark, they're going down the subways, and they hear from a little far away, "Hey, Santa!" And they look now, who's calling me? "Hey, Santa, over here! And they see this Italian guy in a suit. He was kind of like a mob guy, okay? "Santa, come over here!" And he went over there and he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm collecting. Everybody gives a donation." "Oh yeah, sure, you come with me." And he took him into this Italian restaurant, right? And all these mob guys, these $5,000, chrome suits and whatnot. And then he says, Paulie, Tony, everybody give a donation to Santa. Everybody's called either Paulie or Tony. And everybody started pitching in money and more money, and they were dead, lots of money. They're criminals, gangsters, but this is Christmas arrangement. And Aindra went back thousands of dollars that night, and this program was sold. So this is how Krishna works. Like the Christians say, God works in mysterious ways. Okay, and that was Aindra Prabhu's program even before he came here. Then you know what he has done here. And on the weekends, because like I said, New York is Sin City, the city that never sleeps. There's a certain class of people only come out at 10 o'clock at night. I've seen it. They sleep during the day and they come out at 10, like vampires. And they party or whatever. That's how they fill in their own element because they're complete in Tamaguna. So on weekends, Friday night, Saturday night, he would stay out and do this chanting for 12, 14 hours since morning, all the way until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, because the streets are full with people. Then he would go to the temple for Mangalarti, and then just crash. So he was always very, very intense in whatever he has done. And that's who he was. Anyway, I didn't want to speak. I shouldn't speak before Mukunda Datta Prabhu. He wants him to speak next. But he wants... You decide. Gopal Prabhu, yes. After that, Shrutikirti Prabhu, and then Mukunda Datta Prabhu. I didn't mention about the program today, like I said, we were going to sing. First of all, it's supposed to be Pancha Goda Prabhu, be the MC, the master of ceremony. Unfortunately, he fell ill, and he has the runs, etc., etc. And he wrote to me, and he put me on the spot. Yes, so and he asked me to apologize that he cannot be here. He feels sorry that he cannot be here. Okay?
So Aindra's earlier life, as Govinda Prabhu was giving some of his leelas in the United States, I was unaware of any of these leelas. But his enthusiasm was very visible even at that time. So he was imbibed with this spirit of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I met Aindra the first time in 1993. Actually, for me, that was the first time to even come to Vrindavan. So we know that in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, many of his associates wanted to come to Vrindavan, but for some reason he always sent them somewhere else. But in 1993, I was fortunate enough to be able to come here, and I moved into the Brahmachari ashram just 2 doors away from where Aindra Prabhu was staying. And at that time he had already begun his 24-hour kirtan, although he didn't receive, just as Govinda said in New York, he didn't receive the support from the establishment, but his determination was quite strong. So every day he would come, sit with his harmonium, and assemble a group of other of his God brothers and newer devotees, and begin chanting. And in rotation, they would continue to chant. For myself, unfortunately, I never took part in that because I had also made a vow at that time that my kirtan was on my japa beads, and so I vowed to do 120 rounds a day. Whereas now, in retrospect, I think perhaps I was a little selfish, thinking of my own interest, whereas Aindra Prabhu, he imbibed the spirit of Lord Chaitanya, and we can see today many of you young boys never even had the opportunity to have Aindra's association, but you have become empowered by his potency to continue this wonderful 24-hour kirtan process. So we know, those of us who had met Aindra, that he was a bit eccentric at many times. He was very eccentric and very outspoken. And when he wasn't involved in chanting, leading the kirtan in the temple, most of the time he would spend in his room. And we know that because he had such a large collection of deities to worship, and also he had taken a vow to chant so many rounds every day that you very seldom saw him outside. He had a few friends that they would invite him to come to their home and prepare prasadam. He enjoyed eating nice prasadam, especially sweets, and especially gulab jamuns and simply wonderfuls. So he would come and fill himself until almost unconsciousness, eating these sumptuous sweets. So at this time, this was before cell phones and even before computers had come. So every day in his room, he would always listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam class on the radio, which is still going on today. And being very opinionated, he would very carefully listen to whoever was giving class. And if he felt that there was any deviation in their presentation, he would immediately leave his room and he would run down to the temple room, and that little enclave in the very back where we set Tulsi Devi and also Damodar Astika, we put Lord Damodar there. He would pace back and forth, watching the speaker give his class, and waiting for his opportunity to, to either correct or ask some questions. So those of us who spoke as I said, there was no computer, so everything had to come from either handwritten notes or something that we had read and had been able to retain. They would see him pacing back and forth, and this was very discouraging because they knew that he was going to chastise them for saying something inappropriate or asadanta, something which is outside the teachings that were given to us by Srila Prabhupada. And because of his chanting, he was always asking anybody who was going to Delhi. So, at that time, Vrindavan, not like today, but there was nothing in Vrindavan from the beginning of the road coming from Delhi all the way to Lower Bazaar. It was nothing, vacant, empty. And stores like now have everything that you can want, but at that time there was nothing available here in Vrindavan. And one of Aindra's most coveted possessions were fishermen's friends. Because of his chanting, he needed it for his throat. And this is a very strong lozenger. And anytime anyone was going to Delhi, and even in Delhi at that time, they were very hard to find. He would say, "Bring me fishermen's friends, bring me fishermen's friends." And so we would oblige, and if we could find, we would bring him back these fishermen's friends. As I said, his enthusiasm was unbounded. He continued this chanting, and we can see the result of his enthusiasm and his determination, that he influenced the behavior of so many devotees. He was called, what was that Pritam Maharaj said? He was dressed like Flintstones. So, and this was his dress style, and even his dress style, Bhagavad Purana Prabhu is mimicking Aindra's dress style. Mimicking. the same meaning. But in this way, he influenced so many boys, and encouraged them, that today we can see that his legacy is going on. As Prithu Prabhu had mentioned also, the way in which unexpectedly Aindra was taken from us here was not the typical type of departure that most of us hope for. So the lesson to be learned here is that inevitably all of us are going to die, and when and how we die, we don't know. It's not that we're going to be lying on a bed of roses and sweet music playing and fragrant aromas wafting about. No. Suddenly death may come and take us out of this material world. So the lesson that we learn here, and it was exemplified by Aindra Prabhu, is that the whole purpose of what we do here is that we are learning how to die, because death is going to come. That's why we chant we engage in deity worship, and we try to engage ourselves and our mind 24 hours a day thinking of Krishna, because when that time of death comes, if we're not, then wherever the mind is at the time of death will determine our next birth. But Aindra, he was surrounded by his deities, and in this horrific explosion was able to fall dandavat. So it was a very nice opportunity to meet such a nice devotee. So I'll stop here.
And today being 1st of April, that April 1st, Aindra Prabhu was doing kirtan in the temple as usual. And he came down for his kirtan. And he started this very slow and very deep and heavy, very brave. He's holding out the note for a long time, full meditation, very great mood in his face. And if you know him, he had this little box of fisherman friends next to him, and he was like, two at a time in his mouth, and immediately chew it, patiently. And if you know, Aindra Prabhu was very, like I said, opinionated. If you liked something, he swear by it. He didn't like it, he didn't say, okay, it's not so good. He said, is it useless? Right? So fisherman's friends had to be the original flavor, or the yellow anise flavor. Anything else was useless, nonsense. And then Bhagavad Purana, that was you. He pulled out his bag of fisherman's friends. This is a lemon vanilla flavor. And he gave it to me, and I put it in the box. And Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, next thing he took was that, and he popped it in his mouth. And suddenly his grave mood turned into this, what is this nightmare? What's in my face? And he's looking at me like, something's bad, but I can't tell you in the middle of kirtan because it's so loud, and they're looking at me, but I was already laughing. And Father was cracking up. And then he understood we were up to something, and we did it, and we figured it out. And he was like, hey, Bruce, fool.
Probably from 1996. I started coming 2000, 2001. I was in a meeting with him in Prabhupada's room with Gopal Krishna Maharaj. So I'm not sure, this was probably right around 2000, 2003. So at that time there was some discussion, because I think some of the ladies were feeling that they weren't getting where they wanted to be, I guess, basically, or perhaps even chanting. And I was in there, Gopal Krishna, of course, Aindra Prabhu, Amekala was there at that time. And he said, of course, and someone was saying that he didn't appreciate the women. And he said there couldn't be anything further from the truth. And he said something, of course, which is not something we say very often. He said, I'm more of a woman, he said, than I could say. So he was saying, how could anyone think like that? He was very much feeling in a certain mood, so he expressed that. Anyway, I've had some association with him, I can say, through one of his with my wife Vishaka, who adores him to this day. So she's told me many things over the years, expressed many things. what I see as that he's done, which is most important. We use that Prabhupada saying something's most important, which everything is. But what he's giving most important is Harinam Sankirtan, the way Prabhupada gave it to us. The very simple formula. It's so nice, to come here at this time. I've been able to attend sometimes a few hours here and there at the Kirtan and just sit there before Krishna Balaram. No flash, no anything, just everybody sitting on the floor there doing Kirtan. This is our process, I could say so many things. We all know different styles of chanting we see inside our society, outside of our society. Kirtan is now an international, global phenomena, Kirtan. But it has many different processes. It's done in many different ways by many different types. But he has definitely put his mark and imprinted it into our society, how Kirtan is performed, the beauty of glorifying. We go back to the beginning when Madhvisa, who Prabhupada called the emperor of Kirtan, and he asked Prabhupada how do we attract the masses, how to attract people with our chanting. And it's in a letter, and Prabhupada responded, we're not trying to attract people, we're trying to attract Krishna, no one else. Because if we do that, everything follows. This is what Prabhupada did. It's very, very obvious. But it's also sometimes a little difficult to take ourselves out of that and just want to glorify Krishna. So he has mastered it, and he transferred it to so many of you that just like Prabhupada handed the movement to so many people, and it's our business to spread it. He's done that with Kirtan, proper way to do Kirtan, and it has its effect. As I said, and I've seen the effect he's had on people. Like I say, my wife, Vishaka, she was here in Vrindavan area with him for some 7 years. One of the ladies that would dance for Krishna. That's what he taught her, not for anybody else. Look beautiful for Krishna. This is what I've heard from him. Just like Prabhupada told one of his female disciples early on, like the idea of being austere, not looking attractive. You look attractive and men are attracted. And Prabhupada said, Krishna doesn't like ugly gopis. So, as maybe she'll tell you, she's had dreams, Aindra telling her things to do. See, we can have that. I have dreams about Prabhupada. Sometimes funny dreams, but sometimes they seem very clear. I'm getting an instruction. These things are there. And I seen that not his legacy carries on, his instructions are still carrying on. If we're able to hear, just like we know Krishna's in the heart. Instructions are always coming. So sometimes we have a very special attachment to a certain person, so they can help. I have a special, I wouldn't say special, obviously I spent time with Prabhupada, so I go to him for everything. And I know my wife, she goes to Aindra. So still he's there. And I certainly very happy that all of you have taken that torch he's given you of Sankirtan, of chanting purely, no other desire than to just please Krishna Balaram. And he knew the mastery of it. Everyone comes here. So all they have to do is hear that chanting. So I can stop here. I know it's short. But he's left a definite impression on me, more so since he departed than while he was here. Because unfortunately, I didn't have that great attraction to chanting. So therefore, I was outside of that circle. I would come and I had my people I socialized with here in Vrindavan. But he was not your normal type that just wanted to speak. He knew what he wanted to speak about all the time. So unfortunately, I was left out of that situation. But by him and others, I hope to live here soon and do as Prabhupada wanted, just be part of this eternal kirtan party. Goes on eternally. We can all be with him. As Prabhupada said, all in ISKCON, we'll all be back there in the spiritual world together. Imagine such a fate. So we have to learn to get along, and we can be there. You can be back there in Aindra's kirtan party as well. There's going to be in Vishnu Jan's kirtan party. These are our heroes, and rightly so, because they're doing the one essential thing you have to do. If you want to see the devotees who are most admired, this is who comes up. Aindra Prabhu, Vishnu Jan Swami, and Jayananda. So all they ever wanted to do was serve. And that's the secret, however we can do it. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadandigam Adadanaschanandantai Vidam Yache Puna Puna Sima Rupa Padambujo Julisyam Janvajanmani Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripasindhuvebhacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. So we're all gathered here in Sri Vrindavan Dham in the Balaram Hall on this day to honor the appearance day of Sripad Kirtan Chandra Namanandi Aindra. Somehow this was a name that we all came up with. I think Lokanath Swami suggested Namanandi. I liked Kirtan Chandra. So Kirtan Chandra Namanandi. Kirtan Chandra because you see this beautiful moon-like face. I always remember Aindra coming and sitting there in the Kirtan place with his face just like a little angel, who just dropped off a cloud, this wonderful smile, big round face like the moon, chanting Kirtan, so Kirtan Chandra, and he was Namanandi. There's nobody I ever met who was more attached to the holy name than Aindra Prabhu. And we all miss those wonderful days when Aindra Prabhu would, everybody with great anticipation would wait, evening time when Aindra will come to lead his kirtan with all his, you better not miss the kartal beat or you really got it, or the mridanga beat. And he would just sit and just, I'm one of those people who just gets one tune and goes with one tune, but he liked to give a bouquet of flowers to Radha Shyam Sundar. So he would chant from one melody to the next melody, giving a whole bouquet of flowers, kirtan flowers at the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Vrindavan Chandra. And unfortunately, I never got so much association with him because he was always in the beginning he was East Coast devotee, I was West Coast, and then finally down in South America. And then here, as much as Aindra was always in Krishna Balaram temple, I was outside somewhere. I'm always wandering around Braj somewhere. In fact, I hardly ever saw Aindra outside of Krishna Balaram temple, but I remember somehow my friend Janaki Das, when he was doing the jail preaching program, he got Aindra to come all the way to Agra, to the jail. And to this day, the prisoners, they still ask, where's that red-haired Baba? They remember his kirtan, they remember him. But that was the only time I actually saw him doing kirtan outside of Vrindavan. But he managed to inspire a kirtan awakening. At some point in the beginning of our movement, when I was a young devotee, practically the only thing we did was kirtan. We go downtown all day long. In the daytime and the nighttime, we go to Hollywood Boulevard. And we just chanted and chanted. Then it suddenly became so-called, what they called Sankirtan, selling stickers and all kinds of weird things and calling it Sankirtan. But Aindra created a revolution back to chanting the holy names. And we see, as everybody's pointed out, all these young men and women here completely inspired by Aindra's kirtan. And we see, now all over the world, kirtan melas are going on, 24-hour kirtans going on. Somebody did 40-hour kirtan for the 40th anniversary of their temple. All of this was inspired by Aindra sitting here in Vrindavan in one place. He managed to inspire the whole world. Prabhupada told, Devi Shakti found some quote, Prabhupada said, Vrindavan is the beating heart of ISKCON, Prabhupada said. So he managed to inspire everyone all over the world. But of course, I'm still one of those ones that take it back to the streets. Now we're doing these kirtan melas. We rent some hall somewhere or some temple somewhere and we do kirtan, all of us together. But we should take kirtan back to the streets. And I'm seeing all over the world. I was just in, where is it? Australia, Brisbane. There's 2 forests that got lost from Braj somehow. They wandered off. There's one, what is that place? Melbourne and Brisbane. Because in the old days, it was just the temple devotees. We go out, we grab our kartals, we all go out and Harinam. But nowadays, there's hardly anybody in the temple. But I saw in Brisbane, it was congregation devotees. And it was people, have jobs and this and that. They would 2 or 3 times a week in Brisbane, they get together and they get all the congregation devotees together and go out and do Harinam. We did some wonderful Harinams, and then we were there in Brisbane for the New Year's Eve kirtan. I saw, Govardhan Adari was there, and all young people that I know, inspired by Aindra. They're all there doing this heavy kirtan, fireworks going on all around us, crazy scenes all around us. But thousands of people would come, and I was thinking, these are all Aussies, what are they going to do? But actually, the Australian people are really nice. They have a sort of a bad rap, but they're really nice. They all came up, they chanted with us, they danced with us, they loved the kirtan. So now we've enlivened ourselves for kirtan with our kirtan melas and 24-hour kirtans. Now we have to take it again back to the streets. I mean, I was at my sister's house in Los Angeles a few years ago, and her daughter's boyfriend asked me, why do you stay in India? They said, well, I'm a Hare Krishna. And he looked at me, what's that? And my sister said, laugh, we don't see you anymore. Nobody sees you anymore. And so we have to take kirtan back to the street. That was actually Aindra's real purpose, was to inspire people to do kirtan and preach. And we have to take kirtan back to the streets to liberate. We became known as the Hare Krishna movement, so we have to go back on the streets and chant Hare Krishna, get everyone, save everyone. Every day we're seeing the world is going to hell. And we know that the only panacea for this Kali Yuga is this chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So like Shruti Kirti said, he made an indelible mark on our movement, and we have to, that mark is distributing the holy name to everyone. So we have to not only chant for ourselves, we have to take it back to the streets. Sripad Kirtan Chandra Namanandi Aindra Prabhu Ki Jai.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakayam Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karodi Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Vansha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So many devotees have expressed wonderful appreciation of Aindra Prabhu. I used to go out on Sankirtan with Aindra in the 1970s. We were distributing Back to Godhead magazines in traffic intersections. Not really sattvic environment, but this is how the compassion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested at that point in time. We know that Srila Prabhupada, he had basically three-pronged attack in his war on Maya. The main thing he emphasized was book distribution, but he also gave due emphasis to prasadam distribution, and of course the Yuga Dharma, Harinama Sankirtana. And he instructed us that our preaching should be carried out along these three lines. As we heard from Prithu Prabhu, different devotees have their different character, their different inclinations, different styles. Aindra was always, as far as I can recall, he was always Harinama Nishtha, fixed in Harinam. Hare Nama Aiva Kevalam, as we've heard. That was him. He just wanted to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He didn't want anything else. And by his determined desire, the strength of his strong desire, he figured out somehow or other, as Prabhupada instructed us, he taxed his brain how to somehow or other do this, Harinam Sankirtan, in such a way that people would be attracted to Krishna consciousness. His preaching in New York City, although I never took part in it, it was a manifestation of his desire to fulfill Srila Prabhupada's instruction and to emphasize this audarya spirit of giving to the public at large the sweetness of Krishna's name. And somehow or other, when he ended up here in Vrindavan Dham, he was actually more effective sitting in one place, sitting and chanting Hare Krishna Kirtan, than he could have been if he had stayed in Manhattan, New York. We don't really know how this Leela unfolds itself over the years. We all have our different ways of looking at worlds. As the air carries different aromas, we all have our different judgments of this one and that one and what's going on. And Aindra was easy to judge because he was non-conventional. But nonetheless, he somehow or other, I've said this before, he spearheaded a revolution of great enthusiasm and abiding interest in chanting Hare Krishna, particularly in Sankirtana. Kirtan all together, many people, loud, Utkirtan. And particularly with young people, I don't know how many people in this room, maybe 200, 250 people. How many, raise your hand if you're over 50 years old. Not so many. Especially he had some appeal for young people. Now, You can say that this is because the kirtan, the musical element of kirtan is intrinsically emotional, and it attracts people on that level. And there's, of course, some truth in that. But Aindra was in his own category. One of my sannyasi godbrothers said about him, Aindra has his own tattva. We know we have Shiva tattva, Vishnu tattva, Jiva tattva, Aindra tattva. So he didn't really fit into any category. He made his own category, and people are still following in his footsteps because he had some kind of powerful charisma. Who gave that? Why does it come about this way? How does this happen? We can't predict these things. We can't judge these things. We can only, if we're intelligent, sumedhasa, we can try to take part, and we can at least offer our respects. Somehow or other, Aindra had he was empowered with some potency that he was able to spread this kirtan all around the world. He was a reformer in that sense, as Dinabandhu Prabhu mentioned already. Practically speaking, after the book distribution, the emphasis on book distribution that Srila Prabhupada himself was driving, no doubt, somehow the kirtan element became a little bit secondary, prasadam also. So Aindra changed that. And now we find that Harinam is most prominent worldwide, and not only in ISKCON. You have, if we heard already, different styles of kirtan you have. Aindra had his own style, but his style was so powerful somehow or other. Krishna gave him that prominence that it's worldwide now, and people are still following even years after his departure. So we have to respect this. Harinama Sankirtana cannot be spread except through empowerment, and he was clearly empowered. So I don't want to take too much time. I will stop here. But I just wanted to express this much appreciation that Aindra had some special attachment. Always he had this special attachment to chanting Hare Krishna exclusively. He was so deep in kirtan, so absorbed in kirtan. And he sustained that throughout his whole life. And it was really undeniable by his example he was preaching, sitting here in one place in Vrindavan and attracting so many persons to do what he was doing. And the fact that it's going on after his death is testimony to the empowerment behind what he was able to establish in this movement and in his life and by his example. So we humbly bow down at his lotus feet, and we pray for his blessings, and we try to carry on as best as we can. And Guru and Krishna will empower us to do this in the same way that they empowered him to do the same thing. Sripad Aindra Prabhu Ji ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanand.
Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvasesha Shinivari Pastrajadeshitarne. This may sound like a weird comparison, but we wonder, how does Aindra Prabhu and Thomas Alva Edison, what do they have in common? People may know that Edison created the light bulb. He's known as the inventor of the light bulb. But he did not invent the light bulb. Actually, it was developed long before him. But what Thomas Edison did is he perfected it and made it universally available around the world. And in fact, he tried 6,000 different elements inside the light bulb until he found the perfect one. And he said that in order to succeed in life, we need to find a nail and keep hitting on that one nail. The Bhagavad Gita talks about intelligence that's many-branched, but if one can focus, miracles can happen. So in the same way, Aindra Prabhu did not create or invent kirtan. I believe that happened in Srivas Thakur's house with Mahaprabhu. But what he did, day after day, week after week, month after month, decade after decade, was to go so deeply into the chanting in such, what I think is such lyrical beauty, that he made it impossible not to chant with him, and kind of created a spiritual atmosphere, and it was egoless. There's some talk these days that some individuals may be more interested in performance than the kirtan. As Srila Prabhupada says, it's a devotional sentiment to Krishna. I never got that from Aindra Prabhu. Once, he was like in the pit with all the boys and was encouraging them to sing with him. And when it had to be stronger, they would double up on the mic. And it was, it affected me, and it still affects me very deeply. I have a CD of what is arguably among the thousands of kirtans, 8 of the best, and it just takes me into a spiritual dimension every time I listen to it, and the concerns tend to vanish. So I think we could all take example of this hitting on the nail, because miracles can happen. Just the fact that so many of all of the generations of ISKCON have such a deep respect for Aindra Prabhu. That's a miracle in itself, that there's agreement amongst everyone. And I think if we all find that nail, that devotional service in our life, and just keep hitting on that one nail, we can do so many things, but just find that one thing according to our nature, each individually, that pleases Guru, Gauranga, and Krishna, and just keep doing it, and don't stop. Miracles will happen in your life, and miracles will happen across the world. And we're experiencing that. And so Aindra Prabhu was such a great example of that. And I did not have that much direct association, but in a sense I do every time I listen to his kirtan. Aindra Prabhu ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Om Jnana-Timirandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vasnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paskachari Zatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So it's very, I had a prior engagement. I'm sorry to have come a little later, but it's wonderful to hear
the devotees glorifying Aindra, the memories come back and they're very joyful. So I remember the first time I saw Aindra Prabhu, that was in Washington State Park at the end of one of those big roads in New York. Sorry?
Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, Fifth Avenue. Yeah, at the bottom. There had been a Rath Yatra, I think it was in 81 or something like that, early 80s. And that was like a Prabhupada victory parade. You know, because Prabhupada went to New York. Well, first he went to Boston, of course. And that was Prabhupada's victory parade. Because we all know that Prabhupada started, he had of course he had a plan, but his plan was to, very simple, sit in Tompkins Square Park and chant. Prabhupada talked about that many times, that he didn't even have a madanga. I think he had kartals. Yes. But he didn't have a madanga, of course he couldn't bring that on the ship. And he just sat there and chanted. And he used to chant for an hour or two. So after the Bhagavad Gita class, usually I give on Thursday, I used to always go up to Aindra's room up there, and discuss. And that was his main point, that we're not doing enough kirtan in public. Right? Govinda Das is emphasizing that. And that's how Prabhupada started the movement. Yagya Dana Tapasa. Yagya, Sankirtan Yagya, charity, and tapasya should never be given up, Krishna says in the Gita, because they purify even great souls. So that was Aindra's point, that the real leaders in Lord Chaitanya's movement are those who are practicing and teaching kirtan, because this is Lord Chaitanya's movement. Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalo kalo nasteva nasteva gatiranyata. So management, we must have a management level, Kshatriya level, but it is there to facilitate yagya, kirtan. The Brahmanical class, they perform 6 activities. They perform yagya and they teach yagya. They study the Shastra and they teach Shastra. They accept donations and they distribute donations. It doesn't stick in their pocket. So that is the movement of Mahaprabhu, to study the Shastra and distribute the holy name. Prabhupada explains there's 3 levels of preaching activity. For the general public, who are the Balisha, those without knowledge but not unfavorable or inimical, Sankirtan and Prasadam distribution. And then for those that are purified, Chaitadapana Marjanam, philosophy, tattva, sambandha, abhideya, and the goal should be discussed, the goal of Krishna consciousness. The 3rd level is the Leela of Krishna. Deep study of that is for the Uttamadhikari, the liberated soul. So as we see from Lord Chaitanya, Chaitadapana Marjanam Bhavmaha Nivagni Nivapanam, his first verse is all about the different levels attained. First, Chaitadapana Marjanam, first stage of, through chanting, one will become purified. then Bhavmaha Nivagni Nivapanam. And the sign that that is functioning is that the material fire, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, Rajaguna Samudbhava, it becomes less. That's also there in the Bhagavatam, Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. That if you hear and chant, particularly the Bhagavatam, Kalo Nasta Drisham Esha Puranaka Denodata, if you hear and chant the Bhagavatam, this will liberate you from the lower modes, passion and ignorance. And then Shreyara Chandrik, that means your good fortune is rising. Once your material desires are placated almost to nil, and you're coming to Sattva Gun, and your consciousness is purified accordingly, then that is a good fortune. Because the material fire that is being encouraged by the media and so-called leaders of Kali Yuga is very dangerous, and it's like a forest fire. So then, Vidyavadu Jivanam. It means at this point, the beginning stages of Ruchi and Bhava, one will gain realization directly of one's own spiritual nature and one's relationship to Krishna through realizing Krishna. And then Anandam Buddhivardhanam. And then when one is situated in one's Swarup and cultivating one's relationship with Krishna directly and personally, one enters the ocean of bliss. So this is Mahaprabhu's first verse in the Shikshastakam. So we used to discuss these things, that we can't manage our way back to Godhead. I remember once I was giving a class, and I said we must chant constantly. And one devotee said, it was a senior devotee, I won't mention his name, but Prabhupada said, doing the accounts is the same as chanting. So I wondered about that. Is that really true? Did Prabhupada really say that? I have two categories, and I encourage you to do the same. What you read directly in the words of the acharyas and the devotees, that's one category. But Prabhupada said, I have heard, take it with a pinch of salt until you confirm it properly. So I didn't say to this devotee, because he was senior to me, I said, maybe I should have. But I said, what are you going to do at the time of death? Chant Hare Krishna or get the accounts book and say, it's the same as chanting Krishna, 2 + 2 makes 4. I don't... So, the thing is, Nityananda Shakti is there in the holy name. And I have personal experience in Soho Street that if you, I used to give a little talk and then the lunch prashad, and then we'd have a guest room. They've turned that into a shop now. We used to sell books and beads there, but now they're selling, vitamin pills. So, anyway, I noticed that you just be friendly to people, as Aindra was, and you encourage them to chant. We used to have neem beads. Here you are, 50p, 50 pence. And take them and show them how to chant. And those that chanted or took up a little chanting, they would come back with questions. You didn't have to hey, you're in Maya and you'd better chant because the body is going to take you to hell. No, you just get them to chant, and they'd come back. Hey, I think I'm getting the introductory offer to chanting that you talked about. You know, I think you may remember when you first take chanting, you get a introductory offer. The bliss is, easily available. Later on you have to work on your anathas. That's the tapasya bit. So we used to discuss all those things with Aindra because that was Aindra's focus, the holy name, the philosophy. And the first time I saw Aindra, it was in that Washington Square Park. And Aindra had a very wonderful thing. He had, one of those big, like, Dodge vans in America? It's not a truck size, but it's a good delivery van type thing. If I remember, it was black. And somehow or other, the side, he had made a door. So on one side, it was on the left side, if you were looking at the driver's compartment. And you could open those doors out so that then it was about 10-foot gap. And on the inside of the doors, he had some moldings. I think they were taken from columns in Vrindavan, these kind of, did you see that? Yeah, he had some, and they were gold plated. And then inside the van, there was a platform about 2 foot. And there was Aindra with his harmonium. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So he was there, So I was wandering around looking at this race of Americans. Peculiar country, America, believe me. Anyway, so there was Aindra, and I said, well, that's a really portable Sankirtan center. You could put books under the platform, and there was Aindra and a couple of devotees playing madanga and kartals and chanting. So I remember that. And then, there's many other things. And then another memory, the first, maybe I can claim, 1986, I believe, Aindra came here. So, I think I may have been the first devotee to communicate with him. At that time, you went into the Gurukul directly. There was just the archway. There was no wall or anything and this and that. You just walked through that Jagannath temple preaching place into the Gurukul courtyard. So that was the way up to the Brahmachari ashram. The stairs are still there. So Aindra came in, and he'd obviously just got off the aeroplane. And those things that you put a luggage rack on, a luggage, like a trolley, that's the word. I'm supposed to be an English teacher. Anyway, and he had 2 monitor speakers. You know what monitor speakers are? They're like triangular, right angle. And the singer, if you sing in a band, you need to hear what you are singing. That's not possible in our temple at Gora Arti, I found out the other day. But you have those monitor speakers. When there's 10 madangas and 500 kartals and and you're, what am I singing? Everyone is dancing. It mustn't be too bad. So those monitor speakers were stacked on his trolley, and he had some kind of a bag. And I was spacing out as usual, looking at the trees, something like that. And he comes up to me. Hey, Prabhu, where's the guest house? Do you know where the guest house is? Something like that. He was, intense, you get wired up traveling, especially from America. It's like escaping something. Anyway, so he comes in. Where's the guest house, bro? Do you know where the guest house is? So, well, I think it's, yeah, that's right, the guest house. We didn't have the MVT in those days. This is the beginning of the 80s or something. No, 86. So, oh, okay, thank you, Prabhu. And walked off like that. So I thought, well, that's far out. So, obviously he was planning, he brought speakers. Maybe they taken them from his truck, his van, and he had his plan to chant constantly. So here in the Dham. And of course, that's what he did. And that is Prabhupada's encouragement to everyone. And Prabhupada mentions this in many tapes. He says, whatever you like to do, whatever your propensity is, then do that as an offering to Krishna. If you like to do music, if you like to write the accounts, okay, write the accounts. But don't, get sticky fingers. So, Aindra's propensity was music. So, that is Prabhupada's system. If you like to cook, cook for Krishna. Right? If you like to dress the deities and you want to do regulated puja and that's your taste, then do that. And that's very simple to understand. Because whatever we're comfortable and enjoying doing, we can do long term. Of course, as Prabhupada also says in tapes, you have to sometimes do the needful. Like overeat at the Sunday feast. So, I used to discuss with Aindra many things like that, and he was writing his book, and he'd read parts of the book. I said, Aindra, that's that's a little heavy, don't you think? Maybe you should polish the edges on that. So, no, it's meant to be. Because he was an intense person, but he was using that intensity in his service. I mean, you all know he was very much into Ekadashi. At the beginning of, Chaturmasya. At the beginning of Chaturmasya, he'd be stout, and at the end of Chaturmasya, he'd be skinny, Aindra. And then he put weight on again, because he used to have a gas bottle and a fire stove, and he used to cook for all those hundreds of shaligrams. And it was mainly in oil. I used to tell him, Aindra, I don't know if that's the best diet for you. So, this is what the deity's eating. So, on days like this, we remember Aindra, and it makes us realize that we should also apply ourselves with whatever intensity we have. But whatever our propensity is, we must chant. There's 4 types of chanting mentioned in the Shastra. You can read in Jaivadharma. The first one is manasik japa. That is chanting within the mind. Then upamants. That is chanting that is just within the mouth. Yes, moving of the lips. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And then kirtan means louder chanting. Maybe you're chanting by yourself, or you're chanting loudly on your beads. And then sankirtan. Sang means together. And one tape I always remember, Prabhupada explains that kirtan or kirtan means to describe. So shravanam, kirtan. So when we are doing public kirtan, and that's what we used to do, I remember when we joined the temple, we would all go out practically 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and we would chant, and then certain persons would have a stash of Bhakti Godheads or small books, Ishopanishad, and they would circulate around the kirtan party, all the people. What's going on here? Now I believe in UFOs. They've just come down. Anyway, we would sell the Back to Godhead magazines. I don't know what happened to the Back to Godhead magazine, but I was talking to Dhritarashtra. We used to print millions of them. And actually, the Back to Godhead magazine is what got me to chant. A friend gave me one, and he said, I remember reading, if you chant Hare Krishna, you'll be blissful. So I thought, that's good. So I took up chanting on rosary beads. So that was, and that still is and should be, our public face. And then at the same time, we would have little packets of prasadam, sweets or halava or something like that, or the ISKCON bullet, as Prabhupada used to say, a gulab-jamun, and we would distribute that. And we were world famous because of that. So Aindra's point was, and he was very forceful on this point, that we're forgetting that. I remember we have to deal with this point. We're not respecting Aindra. After Srila Prabhupada left, Sankirtan turned into collecting money. Before we were going on the street distributing books and prasadam, then Sankirtan became selling oil paintings and giving the money for gold-plated toilet cups or something like that. So that is not Lord Chaitanya's movement. Sankirtan means congregation chanting of the holy name. And so my request is, and my request to myself is, that we never forget that point. And Aindra, he really enthused everyone and reminded us of that point. Because after Srila Prabhupada, everyone got, of course, it's natural after a great acharya physically is unmanifest, let's put it that way, that there's some confusion in the ranks. There's some adjustment. We must understand that. That's natural. I think the management of ISKCON is well-meaning in every way, but we must always remember that management is to facilitate kirtan and to facilitate the distribution of Bhagavat philosophy. It doesn't stop at the Kshatriya level. The Kshatriyas are the servants of the Brahmins. They take direction of the Brahminical class. And Aindra had that. Now, just one thing, I know there's many of you, and I want to hear you also. There's just one thing that occurs to me. Because I used to fiddle around with the harmonium for years. But you know, to master a musical instrument, you have to apply yourself daily. So I was getting a little better, and I said to Aindra, I said, can I maybe sit down and lead the kirtan in the temple? He said, yes, if you chant passionately. With passion. You may have been, I don't know. So I said, well, also, I'll try not to appear better than you at it. And he had a good laugh. He didn't say anything. Of course, I was joking. I mastered the art. I have mastered the art of playing less better than Aindra. Because Aindra, the whole thing about I remember him telling me, because sometimes the Indian body devotees, and they may know all the ragas and all that. And Aindra said, they're really good. I'm just a folk kirtaniya. I don't know any of that. Right? You remember him saying things like that? But the real point of perfecting our hearing and chanting, whether it's manasik or whatever, is that we should chant for the pleasure of the deity. Then it becomes yagya. This is the meaning of yagya. It doesn't mean just fire sacrifice and bananas and grain and ghee. Yagya means that you do everything for Krishna, your propensity. But we must add the propensity of chanting, right? And that is the sign of your advancement. If you are getting a taste when you're chanting, then you can be very confident that you're making progress. You should feel confident. You should observe yourself. And so, this is so important that we don't chant. You see, in the material world, everyone is acting for themselves. Right? They're getting a job for the money. They may be supporting their family. They may be attached to their society and so on. But it's because it fulfills their desires. So that's the material disease. We're acting on a selfish basis. We're a selfish servant of our senses and mind. But the spiritual platform is to be a selfless servant of the Supreme. So when we chant, and when we study the Bhagavatam, Krishna says in the Gita, one who worships this sacred conversation worships me with his intelligence. So if we want to make progress in chanting and become established on the spiritual platform, we have to chant not because it's going to make me blissful, or because I'm going to go to Golok for me. No, we forget any of that, what result. And we just do our service and our chanting as an offering to Guru, the Vaishnavas, and Krishna. We develop that seva bhav. So when we chant, we do it as an offering to Krishna. Bhuta Shuddhi. Before chanting, you should sit down, think, I'm a spirit soul, I'm not this body. Gopi Bhata Kamalayo Dasa Das. Purify the living entity, your consciousness, and then I'm a dasa das and a das. So now I'm chanting for the pleasure of Krishna. Then you're entering seva bhav, you're entering the spiritual platform. So that's why Aindra, he said he was a folk player and so on and so forth. But that was why his kirtan was so nice. Because it was imbued with that spirituality that is there and available for all of us through seva bhav. So now we'll chant Hare Krishna mantra one time, but we'll do it for the pleasure of Aindra Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada, all the Vaishnavas, and Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gonitai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. See? Nectar. Thank you very much. All glories to Aindra Das, Prabhu. Jai.
Gurve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Hintaralaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivajari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Aindra Prabhu ki. So I was very fortunate to have had a good association, a lot of association with Aindra Prabhu. Starting in New York, 1984, I had gone to New York, actually just for Rath Yatra, supposed to be there for a little while. But then the devotees, they asked me to stay a little longer to help with the preaching to the Indian community, because I already spoke Hindi at that time, and to help with the deity worship. And so then I decided to stay a little longer, and then I had the good fortune of very quickly coming in association with Aindra Prabhu, and we immediately had a good relationship, a quite close relationship. Of course, he was much senior to me in years and in Krishna consciousness, but it was very like a good friend, best friend. So not with that profile that I'm senior, you are junior, but immediately he opened up as a good friend, and he was telling me his plans for preaching, and so at that time he was going out, trying to go out almost every day in the streets of New York, chanting the Maha Mantra. And as we heard, he had one truck, and to the side he opened, and then actually had deities of Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta, small deities, and small Gonitai, which he was worshipping every day. And so in the morning, and then in the evening he used to take them out on the truck, and then he was going out. So with a few devotees, there were not so many devotees, a few devotees were there. And so I was very impressed because of his determination. He was ready to go out every day in the summer, winter, rain, or good weather, bad weather, and despite all difficulties. So the temple was not really supporting him with giving money to build the trunk or buying instrument. He had to collect everything himself. He had one devotee who was helping him, who was working, one Indian devotee. What was his name? Pradeep, I think. So he was giving some money, some others also. And so he had this unbreakable determination, enthusiasm to chant the holy names. So definitely the power was there because of his determination, but because he was worshipping the deities every day. And as we know that if we didn't have the deities here in the temple, what would be the 24-hour kirtan? So in any place. Of course, if one is pure, he can chant anywhere, like Srila Prabhupada in Tompkins Square Park, and then attracting the people, but those who are not yet on the highest stage, so they have to take shelter of the deities, are not different from Krishna, of course, in the spiritual realm. So he was taking shelter of the deities of Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, Gonitai, worshipping them in the morning, and then he was going out in the evening. He was a kind for me at that time already, and he was a kind of avadut. So an avadut means one who is highly advanced, but is not following all the rules and regulations. Like, for example, he hardly came to the morning program. Like he has his own morning program, downstairs. He was staying in the basement, doing his deity worship and chanting his japa. Sometimes he used to come and see the deities, sometimes Mangalatik, sometimes Guru Puja. But mostly he was just downstairs taking care of his deities and chanting. And even, for example, this truck, he was building with his own hands. As Prabhuji was telling, Keshidamana, very artistic, very beautiful. Just like we see in India, the beautiful decorations are there in the temples. So that truck was not just for Sankirtan, but it was a small temple. And he had his deities there, he made for the deities, for Gonitai. And then he was chanting the holy names, because it is the Yuga Dharma. So he was empowered by Nityananda Prabhu, by Mahaprabhu, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada, and our A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So the mercy was there because of his endeavor, because of his determination. So he got the mercy, he was empowered. And also because in spiritual life, so we have to engage in devotional activities, but then we have to give up sense gratification. Otherwise, you will not make so much advancement. So, as we have heard also, and I saw personally how he was doing Chaturmas every year, and as we heard, so he was quite chubby. And then he was doing Chaturmas, eating once a day khichdi, which he cooked himself, unspiced, Havishyan, and even he was doing, which is very difficult with hardly anybody is doing, he was doing Chandrayan Havishyan. That means full moon is there, and then he had a big plate of prasad, and then he was putting his hands behind, and he was going down, and then eating as much as he could. And the rule was, if somebody is calling you, "Hey, Aindra Prabhu," and you look up, then you cannot go down again and eat. You go down and you eat as much as you can. So he was doing extremely difficult vrat. So he was the personification of austerity also. And so he lost a lot of weight, but still he was going out. Towards the end of Chaturmas it was a little difficult because he was so skinny and he lost so much weight and energy, but he was pushing on. And then after Chaturmas, then he used to get the Mahaprasad from his friend, our friend, Ramabhadra Prabhu, who was president, and who was head pujari there, and I was serving the deities there also, Radha Govinda, which Prabhupada installed in Jaipur, 1975. So and then he quickly gained weight again in the winter, but he was going on with his kirtan almost every day. And then they asked me to take care of the bhaktas also. There was no bhakta leader, so I was doing some deity worship, taking care of the bhaktas and preaching to the Indian community in the evening. And then so I used to go out also with the new bhaktas, and I used to join Aindra Prabhu for his kirtan. I tried to go every day, but it was not always possible because I was doing deity seva also. But a few days, and then I used to be together with him for maybe 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and doing his with his kirtan, which was really enlivening and wonderful, and putting all his energy inside the kirtan. So this was my first association with him. So, and yes, about the power of the chanting. So the mercy is there because of the endeavor, but not only that. But the consciousness has to be there. Bhav. So Sri Chaitanya was the Kali Yuga avatar, and he was giving the chanting of the holy names, but he gave the bhav also. And so he was, of course, then discussing about Mahaprabhu. We used to almost, whenever possible, we used to talk together about Mahaprabhu Sankirtan. Or he was talking more, I was talking a little bit. Because once he was talking, then he can talk for hours without stop. And many times I had to excuse myself, "I'm sorry, but I have to do my deity seva." Okay, you can go. And then especially he was absorbed in Radha Krishna's pastimes. So of course the Maha Mantra is not different from Radha Krishna, not different from Mahaprabhu. So if we don't hear about Mahaprabhu, if we don't hear about Krishna, then our chanting will be not so strong, will not so be pure. Because ultimately, as it is mentioned, we should always remember Krishna, his form, his qualities, and his pastimes. So every day he was reading about Krishna, about Mahaprabhu, and discussing about Krishna and Mahaprabhu. Of course, as Keshidaman Prabhu also said about philosophy, he was talking philosophy. So he was a great talker. And once he started, he could hardly stop, talking for hours. And then, so that was 84, 85, and then he also told me, well, I think I should go to Vrindavan. I had a call from inside to go to Vrindavan for the 500th anniversary of the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then he had come to India, he came to Mayapur, and then he came back to Vrindavan. And then he was thinking, I should also go out preaching with the bus and the truck, and just like he was doing in New York. And then he was endeavoring to get a truck, but it was here in India the things are not so easy to get done. So he found it difficult, and then after some time he dropped the idea, and then because he had heard Prabhupada wanted 24-hour kirtan here, and in the beginning, well, Prabhupada's time they were doing, but they were always struggling, and soon after Prabhupada left, after maybe, at least when I came first, 1980, there was no 24-hour kirtan. There was only, kirtan doing the Mangalatik and the Guru Puja, and then evening time Sandhyatik, that was all. Sometimes in noontime they were chanting Yashomati Nandana, that song, so by Bhaktivinoda Thakur for the pleasure of the deities. But other times, they had a tape of Prabhupada chanting bhajans. Krishna meditation was the most common cassette which was played, which was very wonderful also, very beautiful. But actually Prabhupada, he wanted that the devotees, they should chant 24-hour kirtan, Akhanda Kirtan. So then he decided that was that was on Vijay Dashami, just before Kartik, the day when Ramchandra Bhagavan, so he defeated the wicked demon, Ravana. So Vijay Dashami, Vijay means the victory. And as we say, as we have heard also the first verse of the Chaitanya, the Shikshashtakam, Param Vijayate Se Krishna Sankirtanam. So he chose that day of Vijay Dashami to actually establish again the 24-hour kirtan, to start the Param Vijayate Se Krishna Sankirtanam. So then, on that day he started, he had only a few devotees. So himself he was chanting at least 6 hours, sometimes 8 hours, 10 hours, because he only had a handful of devotees. Now they have like 16 devotees, right? 16 or how many? Minimum 16, and always 6 hours also, 4 times 6. Everyone is chanting 6 hours, and so they have time to chant the japa and read also. But at that time there were maybe 5-6 devotees, that's all. And then they had to chant more than 6 hours, and he himself, he was chanting more, sometimes 10 hours. Sometimes night time, there was nobody there to do the night shift, and he was chanting alone, kirtan, with the kartals at night time, because nobody else was there. So his determination was extraordinary. So at that time also I had actually come back to India in 87, and then so we continued our friendship, and I was first in the Gurukul as teacher, ashram teacher, and so I used to regularly go and see him and talk Krishna Katha, or mostly he was talking and I was listening, and so he was a great inspiration. And then at one point they needed a pujari, and actually at that time there was one time a strike. They had some problem with the head pujari before me, and all the pujaris, they said, we're not going to serve there with this present head pujari. And then they had the ladies, proper disciples, to dress the deities for 2 days. But then some senior devotees were saying, well, it doesn't look good in India, the ladies dressing the deities, so we should get the Prabhujis. And they had heard that Aindra also had some experience from New York, dressing the deities, but not much, but a little bit. And then he came on the altar. At that time, the head pujari of New York, he had come also, and together they were dressing Radheshyam. And then actually he was dressing for 8 months, Radheshyam, every day in the morning. In the evening, somebody else was there. And that was another contribution. So not only this kirtan, but then he was also, his contribution, as far as I'm concerned, is that he was trying to give Braj Bhakti, not just ordinary Bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti, but Raganuga Bhakti, which we have to ultimately embrace in order to go to Golok Vrindavan. So he was trying to also emphasize that point, to stay in Braj Bhava, and perform Raganuga Bhakti, following the eternal associates of Krishna in Braj. So, which there's a need, of course we cannot speak to the public so much about that, and sometimes he was doing that, and he was giving class, like morning class, 8 o'clock, usually 8 to 9 o'clock, this is the class. But when he was giving class, it was going on 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, And then sometimes 12 o'clock, and then, well, it was time to stop because it was Noon-Artik. So he was talking, and of course, sometimes it's a little bit too much about Braj, so that the management told him, well, Prabhuji, sorry, you cannot give class anymore. And then for a few months he was not giving class because he was too much speaking about Braj, about Raghunaga Bhakti, which of course many devotees they liked, but some they were objecting. So because there is something to be spoken amongst the devotees who are more advanced, so he was advanced, but not everyone in the audience was so advanced to be able to understand. But sometimes the devotees are so much overjoyed, and then they are just expressing their bhav, their heart, so it is natural. And he could sometimes not control, and he was just speaking about Radha Krishna and their wonderful pastimes. So he was completely absorbed in not only the kirtan of chanting the Maha Mantra, but in hearing about Krishna's pastimes, especially in Braj. Not so much about Krishna in Mathura or Dwarka, but Krishna in Braj. Even while he was doing his seva, which was sometimes 2-3 hours, he had one devotee reading the books of the previous acharyas about Braj, about the pastimes of Krishna and Braj. And so that was also actually, I felt, a great contribution, because there's a need ultimately to adopt that mood. And then the other aspect which was important, so the worship of the deities. So in the beginning you worship the deities with own reverence, just like Lakshmi Narayan, as Prabhupada said. And so then we could see in the beginning in ISKCON everything was straight, the chadars, Krishna's chadars, the crown, everything is straight, the garland is straight. But he was like feeling, well, I should present Krishna as he is in Braj. And then so he researched what is Krishna's crown, which he's wearing, according to the scriptures. And then he had them made. And then the dressing also, not everything was straight, but everything was in kind of flowing, the chadar. And then it was looking like Krishna is really dancing, and Radharani is dancing. And one day the garland one side, the other day the other side. So there was variety in his dressing, and it was really, as Krishna, Radha Krishna, they were really there and performing their wonderful pastimes. So because of his bhav, because he was absorbed in that, and that manifested when he was doing the worship of the deities. And he was remembering the pastimes when he was doing the deity worship. And so then one day, that was just actually a beginning of around this time, 1990, I was there also. I was still in the Gurukul. And and at that time, so he was dressing the deities, and then we were coming for darshan, and then he was, as he was always doing, looking if everybody is here for the darshan, if everybody is ready to take darshan of Radheshwam, and he had a big smile on his face, and I was thinking, well, he must have done something special today. And then he opens the curtain, and everybody, Jai Radhesham, offering obeisances and looking up, and then the senior devotees, a few devotees, where is Krishna's flute? Usually when we have darshan of the deities, two things we tell the pujaris Krishna should always have. One is the peacock feather and one is the flute. But then darshan was there, Krishna is the peacock feather, but he didn't have the flute on his hand. And they were saying, hey, Aindra Prabhu, where is the flute? And I saw the flute was in Radharani's left hand. So she stole the flute. So just showing his bhav that many times Radharani and the gopis are stealing Krishna's flute, which is not an easy task, but they manage to steal Krishna's flute. So he was doing the seva bhav, not just the seva externally, but with bhav, remembering the wonderful pastimes of Krishna. While the senior devotees, they didn't like that, and they got heavy on his case. The GBC was there, and they told him, well, they told the head pujari, you cannot have Aindra Prabhu to dress the deities like that. You should chastise him severely. And he was chastised, and then he was so disheartened that the next day he dressed the deities in a very simple way, not hanging the cloth, just like a flop. It was a flop. And then he Then after darshan, he came to me because he had heard I was Pujari in New York, and we knew each other from there. And so I had learned how to dress the deities quickly. So then he asked me to, you take care of, Radhishami, please dress the deities. And then actually in the Gurukul was a little tough for me to take care of the small kids, driving me crazy. And then I was gladly actually accepting the service. And the head Pujari had asked me also to come and help with the deity worship. Even before, when I was in New York, actually they had to ask me to become head Pujari, but at that time I didn't want to. Because usually, if you're management, is not my nature, and the saying was going on, head Pujari means headache. So I didn't want to have too many headaches. I was a simple brahmachari. But then somehow I got married here also. And then I felt, I should take some responsibility. And then I dressed the deities. And then and Aindra Prabhu, so he was doing his kirtan, we used to still meet. And after maybe 2 years, I became head Pujari, and then I was sometimes dressing Krishna Balaram and Radheshyam, and I felt I needed some help with Gonitai. I was dressing also sometimes, and I wanted then Aindra to come back to dress the deities. And then I asked him to, please, you come and dress Radheshyam again on Sunday. And then he happily agreed, and then he was dressing Radheshyam again, till actually he left this world. And then even later on, I asked him to dress on Saturday also. And every festival, so then he was dressing Shama Sundar and I was dressing Radharani in the morning. So and then, of course, while dressing, many times we were discussing about Radha Krishna and their pastimes, or even some other matters were there, about Sankirtan or other things, which he didn't agree with, which, some resolutions from the GBC or what some senior devotees are saying about different issues. So he was very, as we have heard, strongly opinionated. So he had his opinion, and that was actually then mostly the right opinion in his mind, and many times it was true also. But even myself, sometimes I had some slight disagreement, transcendental disagreement, which is all right. But we always had this very close relationship. And of course, always I respected him as senior. But also one time I came up to the room, in his room of my obeisances, and how he was, and he was saying, just forget this crap, offering obeisances, we are friends, and you just sit down and we talk about Krishna. He didn't want any formality, but just this, this loving relationship with his friends, with his devotees in the kirtan party. So it was always a great inspiration to be with him and to discuss, to hear about Krishna's wonderful pastimes, to have him on the altar, and of course to also see him chanting the holy names, so enthusiastic and beautiful melodies, ragas, and so, which, because I know, so he used to sometimes also go see some other kirtaniyas in Braj. So there was many famous other Gaudiya Vaishnavas singing, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and he used to sometimes go and see them and even get melodies from them. And then many times, which were not heard in ISKCON. And one time I heard one melody which he had gotten from one Baba, which was very beautiful. So he had, but then of course he was inspired by the Lord also himself from within, and then he may have his own melodies also inspired by the Lord. So his, and as we have heard, he inspired, and we see the result also. All the youth here, they're so much inspired by him. And even after his disappearance, I met so many devotees who had never met Prabhupada, who had never met Aindra Prabhu, but had heard his kirtans which he was producing, the cassettes and then the CDs, and they were distributed all over the world. And just by the CDs and these cassettes, he attracted so many devotees who became then practically his followers, his admirers, and they took up the chanting of the Maha Mantra. And as we heard, so then from that, so the kirtan melas, and so that started. Yeah. But one more other point is that, like sometimes we see that the japa may be not so much taken care of. Sometimes you see even the kirtaniyas, they're very enthusiastic in kirtan, but then their japa, they are not so enthusiastic. But Aindra Prabhu, he was very enthusiastic in his japa. Many times he was chanting, especially during Chaturmas, especially during Kartik or the Purushottam, he was chanting 64 rounds. Yeah, and actually the year he left, also, 2010, it was just after Purushottam, that time he was also chanting 2 lakhs. Maybe one time he chanted 3 lakhs, one time. And so he by his example, and then those who are doing kirtan, 24-hour kirtan, they should imbibe the mood to chant good japa also. Of course, he might have said, and I heard him also, that, like chanting japa is like a kind of, you're taking some kind of small medicine to cure a cold. But then kirtan is like an injection, which is more powerful. Or that is actually true for the beginners who don't have Nam Ruchi. And then they are together with the advanced devotees who are chanting Shuddhanam, then they will be inspired to chant also nicely in kirtan, and then they may be inspired to chant nicely japa also. But for the advanced devotee, kirtan or japa, there's no difference. They're always chanting pure Shuddhanam. And even Sankirtan, so that doesn't mean only chanting together with all the others, but that means Samyak Rupena Kirtan. Samyak Rupena, that Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada has explained, that means to be fully absorbed in chanting the holy names. So japa, that is also Sankirtan, if you are fully absorbed in that, in chanting Shuddhanam, then is also Sankirtan, and there's no difference. So by his example, so he was chanting the holy names, and many days he was extraordinary. So he was very esoteric person, he was a kind of avadut, an esoteric person, but he was down to earth also, very much down to earth. If, for example, something had to be fixed, like the instruments or even on the altar, we needed something for the deities, and then he was just getting it done himself. So he was really down to earth, and he was doing the needful. Even as we know, many times the bathroom were not clean. And the devotees are very hesitant to clean the bathroom. That is the last service they wanted to do. And but he himself, when the bathroom was dirty, he used to go himself there and clean the bathroom, so that the bathroom was clean. Such an exalted personality, and then the great example in every way. So to do the most, menial service or something which nobody else wants to do, cleaning the bathroom. Anybody here wants to clean the bathroom regularly? Bhagavad, you doing also? He's okay, good if you want to do. Yeah, so maybe we tell the temple commander here to send you to clean the bathroom. But he was leading, and then he was getting some devotees to help. And he was saying, it is my Guru Maharaj's place. And just like Narottam Das Thakur, he was cleaning after Lokanath Maharaj was going to excavate, and then he was cleaning the place where he was passing stool, his Guru Maharaj cleaning. So he was thinking, my Guru Maharaj's ashram is here and the bathroom is filthy, so I have to clean. And he was cleaning himself, the bathroom. And then he brought some other ones, sometimes by force. Hardly anybody was volunteering. Anyway, I should stop. It's 5-1. So many other things to say, but there may be other devotees who can say a few things. But in essence, so his contributions is not only the chanting of the Maha Mantra, his enthusiasm, but his bhav which was behind the chanting, and because of his bhav, he was able to attract the devotees and even the non-devotees. Many times devotees even non-devotees from Delhi, they used to come for the kirtan in the evening. And then so many, not only devotees, outside people, there was so much attracted to his chanting. They used to just come on the weekend to be there with Aindra Prabhu's chanting. He had such a strong impact because of his pure chanting, because he had the bhav, he had the Braj bhav. And because he was austere, giving up sense gratification. So he was empowered. And his deity worship was also inspiring. And after him, actually, even I was dressing the deities before, and I quickly learned, actually, many times it's in the blood, but then I learned some tricks from Aindra Prabhu also to perfect my dressing, and then of course Krishna is inspiring also. But even in that, and then after that, his dressing here, and devotees all over the world, they saw how the deities are dressed in Vrindavan most beautiful. And then they were also following that. So his contribution is not only in the chanting, but giving Braj Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, Dham Nishta, faith in the holy Dham, in Vrindavan Dham, which is important, because without Dham Seva, no Nam Seva. If you don't remember the holy Dham, then you cannot properly chant the Maha Mantra. So we must have Dham Nishta, attracted to the Dham. Live in the Dham. If not physically, then mentally we have to be in the Dham. And then only we can chant properly Hare Krishna, then Krishna will manifest. If you don't remember the Dham, Krishna will never manifest. Mahaprabhu will never manifest. Then it is just the alphabets coming out of the mouth. Just like an air gun. There's nothing inside. But he was having the bhav and the Dham Nishta and remembering the associates of the Lord. That is also there. We have to remember the associates of the Lord. So by his practical example he was showing, by his speaking, and therefore he was attracting so many devotees by his speaking also. And he was maintaining the devotees in his party because he was nourishing them with Braj Bhakti. So, and because of that still, it is going on, the momentum, because he was so empowered. So on this auspicious day of his appearance, we offer our most humble obeisances at his lotus feet. And we pray that we may be able to also come to the platform of chanting Shuddhanam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Aindra Prabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Harinam Sankirtanya ki, Nam Prabhu ki, Sisi Radha Shyam Sundar ki, Gau Premanande, Hare Hare Bol. Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Shyam.
I'm very grateful that I had association with Aindra Prabhu, who was that time he was one of the many of Prabhupada disciples who used to be in Vrindavan in beginning years. And I'm very grateful because I learned a lot from them, especially that mood of extreme surrender to Srila Prabhupada and his mission, and that mood of taking very serious responsibility for this mission. That time Aindra Prabhu for me was a part of the group. There was Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu, Mahanidhi Swami, Pundarik Prabhu, Kurmarupa Prabhu, and Aindra Prabhu. They were brahmachari in brahmachari ashram. So he was just a part of that group. I knew I didn't know much. And he was kind of a mysterious person for me, because often I seen him go somewhere like in very private mood, like in the evening. Sometimes he would go by rickshaw somewhere. After I find out he used to go to darshan of Radharaman. And it's like, for me he was having some kind of like a secret about himself. That time, I'm just going to speak more about the side of deity worship, because this is the area that I was involved with Aindra Prabhu. Even for everybody, he's more famous as a kirtan man. I remember, of course, in beginning, in 90s, his kirtan used to be in the morning. In the morning there was only few boys, not so many, but I remember that there was him and Nitai Prabhu and Mathura and few more boys. They keep changing It was not so much like steady group, but he always was there. But more than that, I remember his dressings of the deities, because it was always very exciting. Like 7:15, we would be just all waiting what's going to happen today on the altar, because every day was very spectacular. Every day was just very different, unique decoration, and usually it's just whatever flowers were around, whatever, was available locally, it was, presented there in the altar, and that was just a lila going on, as Mukunda Prabhu was mentioning. Like I remember particularly that, for example, one morning, they opened the curtain and the deity were like all in with the starry flowers. It was a rainy season, and we used to have many bushes around the temple with these starry white flowers. So all of them were picked in the morning, but one of the boys, and they were all on effulgence and all around the deities, and it was very beautiful and very like natural. That was I liked his style of dressing very naturally, that they were like, personalities standing there on the altar, and chadars and Radharani's skirt, everything was, very dynamic, and every day very different. And the next day there would be like, whole bushes of bougainvillea around the deities, and the miracle will be always in effulgence. Like the time, I remember Purnima Mataji, and there was Srimati Sundari Mataji, they used to make all this flower decoration for the deities with the bouquets and extra flowers they were picking in Gaushala and bringing there. So it was always very exciting, his dressings. And Radharani always had this, pink cheek, and he would always say that because she was running, she was running either do some service for Krishna, either to meet Krishna. So there was always, everything had meaning, when he was dressing. So then that time we were just making 10 big tulasi garlands, which was offered, in the Mangalarati 5 and 5 in the darshan time. But the flower garland, they were getting from outside, mostly just a miracle garland, because roses, they would always fall apart. So like I have some old pictures, and you can see that there was mostly miracle and some bella in the summer. But then after some time, when Kadamba Kanana Maharaj became a temple president, his wife Ishani, they just came from Mayapur, so his wife Ishani, she said, what's going on here? In Mayapur we're making garland by, devotees, we're making garland ourselves. Why are you buying this, like rotten miracle garlands from the outside? Let's make the garlands. So immediately she set up the scene, like I supposed to make Gauranitai garland, Purnima Mataji, because Mukunda Prabhu was already dressing, so his wife Purnima Mataji was making Radha Shima Sundar garland, and there was one Mataji from Australia, Parajita Mataji, who happened to be that her husband was a good gardener, and he made a garden in Gaushala of flowers. We had very beautiful flowers after some time. So we started to make garlands. There was only few of us, maybe 4 Matajis only, that we started to make with. So like, I was responsible for Gauranitai, but then also we have to make for Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta and the Gopi garland and this garland and that garland. We were managing everything. But somehow we started, and it was going on, and it was very nice service. And as I was involved, like in time I was involved more and more in this service, Aindra Prabhu started to give me like more personal instruction, how he wants the garlands and how they should be. And slowly also we were getting different varieties of flowers, and that we could actually like make something more opulent and more beautiful. Like, champa came, after some years champa flowers came, and they were like very they have very nice appearance. So I remember that, he used to come sometime there where we were making garlands, and, he would give some, suggestion or some correction and some. So like for Srimati Radharani, he wanted garland to be very long, and some devotees didn't like it because it was just seems to be disproportionately too long. So they were complaining, why are you making such a long garland for Srimati Radharani? It's like almost longer than Shyamasundar. So I went to him and I said, devotees complaining that, Radharani's garland too long. Oh, Krishna. He went for 2 hours in discussion how they don't know anything and how Rupa Goswami is writing that Radharani has 3 types of garland. One is inside very thin, one is kind of medium inside, and there is one garland that is like big and it's very long. And he says, Srimati Radharani is the queen of Vrindavan and she deserves to have the garland until her feet, and you better make. And so I had nothing to say. So we had to, we were making long garland, and then, everyone became used to it, and, he was happy. And then, one time also then we started after some time making flower dresses, which were introduced by Ramabhadra Prabhu, who was head pujari in temple president in New York, that Mukunda Prabhu was mentioning. That time we used to use this glue, Favicon, to glue the flowers, and of course now we have all these orchids, expensive flower, different varieties of color. But the time was just red roses, white, these margarets, and some yellow margarets, and like not so much variety, but then there was somehow, Prima Mataji at that time also, she was making design, and we were making these very simple flower dresses, but it was for all the festivals we had flower dresses. I remember even for Gaura Purnima and Nityananda Appearance we had the flower dresses. Like say we would have new dress in the morning, and in the afternoon we will have flower dress. Very simple, but somehow it looks nice when the flower dress on the deities. So I remember that, and after some time, he didn't like it because that favicon was sometimes wet, not dry enough, not fast dry, because especially in the rainy season it wouldn't dry fast. So he said, don't make any more of these flower dresses. I'm not going to put this, it's inappropriate to give to the deities this kind of dresses, which is like very heavy and wet on inside. And then you just have to put them. So then we stopped making with Favicon, but then somehow, I think Vishesha Mataji from France, she had a different idea. In France they were making with this glue gun. So then we invented that glue gun system, and we're still using that glue gun system to make flower dresses. Then, he was okay with it, and, he was giving also his suggestion how the Shyamasundara's pants, or like, there was inside piece to be made like, that just looked like a dhoti. And then sometime also a part of, this regular service that was going on, he was asking also to pick the flowers in the morning, for he used to dress that time already only Saturday and Sunday. So he asked me to pick the fresh flowers for the decoration. So like before, like 20 to 7, I supposed to bring like, freshly picked flowers. Then he would use them for the deities, like, directly from the tree. So I had to climb all the trees in MVT, and, the chokidar will be running after me, and I would be like, trying to get the best champa. And then, he would put it in Shyamasundar's hair, and, he would be very happy. And it was always great inspiration to do that kind of service, because it was just, in that mood of direct worshiping to Shishi Radha Shyamasundar. And then also sometimes he would engage us in making the beads, necklaces from the beads, like Ram Roy Prabhu once he brought the 2 bags of nice quality beads from New York, and then he gave it to me, and many Matajis I used to engage, and in class time we used to make all these necklaces with variety of things in between, and belts and bracelets, and he liked it very much, and he was using them always in his dressings. And so this is just a part, of this regular service. Like in the end, actually, he treated me like one of his kirtan boys, and he would, come for the garlands. He would ask if we have enough flowers, if we have enough people. Of course, by now we have so many people, it's like more than enough. We started maybe with 7 Mataji, but now it's like 70 Matajis. And the amount, the garland we make is just increasing and increasing, and the what is Prasadam kitchen people, they have deities, so they want garlands, and Jagannath Mandir, and the Madar Mandir, and Radharaman Mandir. We're making many garlands, which is very wonderful service, but it involves lots of endeavor, and I'm very grateful for that inspiration that Aindra Prabhu gave me. And part of the making garlands was also his kirtan, because we were making garlands in the afternoon from 4 to 8. So at 6:30 he used to come for the kirtan. So I remember this change. We would be sitting there and hearing the kirtan, it will be somewhere on a bag. But then suddenly, very spectacular way, Aindra Prabhu will appear with his harmonium, and he would enter the temple, and he would go Gornitai Krishna Balaram Radha Shima Sundar, and then he start kirtan, and then suddenly you would start hearing Krishna, his kirtan was so powerful and so direct that Krishna was manifesting in his kirtan, and everyone could feel it. I could just see that, regular, people who would come to the temple, they would stop, they would sit, and they would join his kirtan. You couldn't actually move there in that area, because everyone was sitting there and clapping, and the kirtan was just like one single personality, even if it was many boys, but somehow he united everyone in this single, move toward Krishna, that everyone was just in one move toward Krishna, that kirtan was so very united with this big amount of people, but all united with one idea to glorify Krishna's name, to chant Krishna's name. And that was always very wonderful and unique experience, and every day was surprising how it's happening that, kirtan was going on, but then suddenly when he would come there, it's everything would suddenly change, and suddenly you would, Krishna, Krishna, and then you also become part of this, and it was very wonderful experience. And I remember that day when we had that news that Aindra Prabhu left this body, I was terrified. I didn't know how our temple would be going on without his kirtan, because it was such an important part of the temple life. But surprisingly enough, it says that, people like this, they never die, but they live in the instruction they give and they left behind. So, all these wonderful boys, every day we're still making garland, every day the kirtan is going on, so that his service is continued through the all these boys, to whom I'm also very grateful, because Kirtan every day is so beautiful and so enlivening. And I see all these people come from Delhi, from wherever, and they all would dance and join. When is your dancing program? They would ask, when is the time when you all dancing? And they would join and dance in the Kirtan, and it's just so beautiful, such a wonderful service, and it gives life to our temple. And it's just so nice that it's all going on, and that also proves that Aindra Prabhu's desire to please Srila Prabhupada with this 24-hour Kirtan is, manifesting through all these boys, and it's just so wonderful to have this experience and to have this manifested in our temple. So, thank you so much for hearing me. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and glories to Aindra Prabhupada.
Hari Bol. Aindra Baba ki, Aindra Baba ki, Aindra Baba ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, very nice speakers today. And there's different kinds of preaching. Prabhupada, there's one quote where Prabhupada is talking about Mayapur. He's saying that our only business is to sit down in the Holy Land and chant Hare Krishna. But because you have no taste, therefore I've created so many different preaching programs. Prabhupada also said something to the effect that instead of instead of resolutions, instead of no solutions, instead of revolutions, we should just sit down and chant Hare Krishna like that. And excuse me. So, as I was saying, there's different types of preaching. As Mukundadatta, well, they both wear turbans, actually. Mukundadatta, the first speaker, Mukundadatta, Prabhupada disciple, he explained that briefly about different moods and like that. Everyone has their own, their special propensities in devotional activity, and which is true. We're not robots, but at the same time, which they also explained, is that the Yuga Dharma for this age of Kali Yuga is the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which is the goal. So we should always remember Krishna and never forget him. And I'm not sure exactly. I think there's two different references of types of preaching. One is 3 kinds of preaching, and the other one I think is 4. The one I can remember is that there's what's called lazy, intelligent preaching. So the word lazy has a negative connotation, but in this sense it has a revealing meaning. And then there's, besides lazy, intelligent preaching, there is active, intelligent preaching and foolish, intelligent preaching. The other reference was, I think, this lazy, intelligent preaching, active, intelligent preaching, foolish, intelligent preaching, and active, foolish, intelligent preaching. I'm not sure. But anyhow, so we don't want to do any foolish, intelligent preaching. Foolish, intelligent preaching means that whatever you do, whatever money you spend, whatever energy you exert in your devotional service that bears no fruit, that's not very useful. So that's called foolish, intelligent preaching. And then active, intelligent preaching is very important. In the beginning, when Prabhupada started his movement, he needed a lot of activity, a lot of action, and so he needed all kinds of help, resources, money, energy, etc. And so that's necessary. Of course, sometimes we see that we may spend a lot of money in different preaching projects, and then in the end, those so-called preaching projects, as one mentioned the word flop, so we don't want to do that necessarily, flop. So active, intelligent preaching is there though, because in the beginning, Srila Prabhupada, he had nothing, and it's still very important, imperative. But the higher preaching strategy is called lazy, intelligent preaching. So lazy, intelligent means that with the least amount of energy, the least amount of resources, the least amount of manpower, like that, you get the most returns. Like in business, you have, what is it called? The returns and then the expenditure, like that. So the most amount of returns with the least amount of exertion, like that. So just simply by sitting down in Vrindavan, Mayapur, Jagannath Puri, and chanting the holy name, then the people come to you, like that. So that's the higher level. The other is, as we mentioned, the active, intelligent preaching. We go out, as Dinabandhu Prabhu expressed, out to the streets. So both things are there. But I remember working under His Divine Grace, Aindra Prabhu, that he would always hammer the nail to me personally about this lazy, intelligent preaching, which means just sticking and staying in one place, like Vrindavan. Of course, later Aindra Prabhu, he also instructed some close devotees to actually hit the streets, so to speak, like His Grace Madhava Prabhu, who was one of the original 24-hour Kirtan members. He gave him the green light to travel around the world and do kirtan like that. So both of those things are there. I was going to read something. I don't know if it's much time here. This is a Vyasa Puja offering by Aindra Prabhu, 2008. It's called His Grace Aindra Das Vyasa Puja Remarks. It's not too long, it's very short. So he says, concerning Vyasa Puja, he should be a true representative of Vyasadeva. But even when in that discussion, it is interesting to observe that who was Vyasadeva and who was Shukadeva Goswami. Shukadeva Goswami was not a Diksha descendant, who was not a Diksha descendant of Vyas. Neither was Parikshit Maharaj a Diksha descendant of Shukadeva Goswami. In our movement, it has kind of come to mean that whoever is the Diksha Guru gets the Vyasa Puja. Who is the Diksha Guru? All the pomp and fanfare is about all that, which is not wrong, and you can certainly expect but in the sense that maybe we should see, especially for the benefits of the neophytes, the guru should be worshipped upon pomp and fanfare, so that there is some sense of importance about the relationship generated along with what the guru's thing is. Then it becomes useful. The real understanding of our relationship with Vyas is not a Diksha relationship. There is no consideration of a Diksha relationship. It is a configuration of whether Bhagavat Shikshas through the Bhagavat Sampradaya, that's the Vyasa Puja. The real understanding of the significance of Vyasa Puja in relation to our movement is that Bhagavat Sampradaya is a Shiksha Sampradaya and has basically the principles, has virtually nothing to do with Diksha. Oops, there's a typo. Our Bhagavat line, that which we see, the pictures lined up on the altar, is not even the slightest consideration of the Diksha principle involved. Although we see that there is a Diksha relationship between Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, and there is a Diksha relationship between Bhaktisiddhanta and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, but just because there happens to be coincidentally that Diksha relationship between these three individuals, that doesn't mean that lineup of pictures is meant to show a Diksha Sampradaya. It's not meant to show a Diksha Sampradaya. It means to show the Sampradaya through, though with your Bhagavat Siddhanta has described. So, in that sense, the proper understanding, of course, I am not claiming that this should be a Vyasa Puja celebration, but since it is my ungodly appearance, and since that kind of idea comes up in some people's minds, but at least we should understand what is the Vyasa Puja principle. Principle is good. In the Bhagavat Sampradaya, Shiksha Sampradaya, the representative of Vyas, who is disseminating the Bhagavat Siddhanta, is worshipped, or Vyasa is worshipped through anyone, ... End of comment. So that's it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Says, dear Sripad Aindra Prabhu, Dandavats at your wholehearted service to Krishna Nam Sankirtan today. Today is your appearance day, and there is so much to say. I would like to express my gratitude for your mercy, which can come in many different types of ways and still continues to do. I am overwhelmed on this day as I know that other people have more important offerings. Recently, you appeared to me in a dream with encouraging expression from Goloka. You were unmistakably you, but not as we knew you. Your spiritual form was something out of this world and indicated that by the service Ramroy Prabhu and his Kirtan party are performing along with your every own 24-hour Kirtan party is the way you are extending your Prema Dham. Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jaya. Your fallen, off the beat rascal Gopal Das.
Vanchakalpatrubhyascha kripasindubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Usually I just try to reminisce on a few Aindra meditations during these programs. A friend of mine told me a nice story recently, a devotee named Premadana Prabhu. He met the devotees in Montreal, Canada, and then at a certain point he went to shift to Beirut, Lebanon to start preaching there. So he went to Aindra Prabhu and he said, Aindra Prabhu, please give me your blessings because I will now leave the association of the Sangha that I've had in Montreal, and I'm going to go to Beirut, Lebanon, where there's no devotees, and I'm going to try to do some preaching there. So can you please give me your blessings? So Aindra said, oh, you're going to get married or something? And he said, yes, Prabhu. Aindra said, why are you going to do that? And Premadana said, actually, I had a million reasons why I was going to do that, but in that moment, I couldn't think of any. And Aindra said, the problem is that you're having an identity crisis. So Premadana said, but Prabhu, what about all of my material desires? And so Aindra Prabhu said, just do what I did. If you do Harinam Sankirtan for 16 hours a day, then everything will be taken care of. One time, Aindra Prabhu was describing that there are different types of kirtan. He said one type of kirtan can be compared to like the Maha Ras Leela. And another type of kirtan can be compared to like the Shard Purnim Ras Leela. And the difference is, in some types of kirtan, there's all different types of people who are completely new to Krishna consciousness, who have no connection, people that are just, visiting, hearing kirtan for the first time, people who don't know each other, people you don't know if you're the kirtan leader. Something like in the temple room, it's maybe like that in the peak times. There's so many guests and visitors, and there's visiting devotees and local devotees. And then there's another type of kirtan which can be compared to the Shard Purnim Ras Leela, which is a more intimate type of Leela, which is just having Radharani and her girlfriends, and it's a much more intimate type of Leela. So my response, what I said to Aindra Prabhu, I said, Aindra Prabhu, you are very lucky because you're in a situation where it might be more appropriate to do a type of like Maha Ras Leela type of kirtan, but you have such a nice group of devotees that are so dedicated to you that you can do a style of kirtan that is like more intimate, even in the context of like, in that type of context where there's all types of people there. And so Aindra made a really sour face, and he didn't like that at all. And he said, yeah, maybe you can say that I am lucky. He said, but actually, it is because of the determination of one man that we have what we have here today. One time there was a devotee leading the kirtan in Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi, and he was singing with like a kind of modern Western style. And at one point, Aindra said to the people that were around him, did you hear that? Did you hear that note? That's the sex note. You were there for that. And so anyway, later I said, what does that mean, Aindra Prabhu? What is the sex note? And Aindra said, it is like the flat third of the scale. So I said, well, I don't really understand what that means either, because so many of your melodies are having that note. He says, yeah, but it's the way that you sing it. Anyway, what I understood was he didn't appreciate kind of people singing Sankirtan with like modern Western sensual kind of styles and expressions. Aindra said, especially he was like training his men to be fixed in their consciousness. He said, you should see all of the young, attractive ladies as agents of Radharani. They are checking you. They will notice if you will pay any kind of materialistic attention to them, if you will glance at them with any kind of sensual intention, they will notice and they will report back to you, to Srimati Radharani, and they will tell her, this person is not ready yet to go back to Godhead. There was a devotee, Radheya Prabhu. He was very enthusiastic and very sincere. He wasn't so experienced like in kirtan and as a musician. And Aindra put him on the night shift with one other person. So there were only 2 devotees there. And so Radheya Prabhu said to Aindra, Prabhu, every day I have to lead the kirtan for like 1 or 2 hours, and I don't really know any melodies, so what melody should I use? And Aindra said, the best melody is Srila Prabhupada's melody. So I guess he would do like that. Maybe I'll just end with this. The last conversation that I had with Aindra Prabhu, he was speaking about humility. He said sometimes people have the idea that humility means to speak in a very sweet and gentlemanly way, maybe with some self-disparaging kind of expression like, oh, I am so fallen. He said that is like the external form of humility. He said real humility means, he was speaking about Trinada pi sunichena, Tarora pi sahishnuna, Amanina manadena, Kirtaniya sadahari. He said real humility means constant chanting of the holy name of Krishna. So maybe we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. All glories to Aindra Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
I met Aindra Prabhu in 1990. So how we met him, it was actually my father, he knew him before. So we were living in Agra by that time. So my father said to us that we should go and meet some very nice devotee. He lives in Krishna Balaram temple. So then we came, and it was very, very, very hot day because it was summertime, I guess May and June. So we went upstairs. Even though I was a girl and we were not allowed to go up on the brahmachari ashram, but somehow there it was very hot. So no one was around, and it was 2 o'clock, so it was prasadam time. So somehow or other, myself, my father, and my younger brother, we went upstairs. So Aindra was doing deity worship, and he was wearing his very, very, gamcha, and his Gaurnitai was also wearing his gamcha, because at the time he was not having AC in his room, just a small fan, and it was really hot in his room. So first my father banged the room, and then he opened the gate. First he saw my father, and then my brother, and then when he saw me, he was like, come in, come in, come in. And then, we came, all of us in, and then he locked the door, he closed the door. And we were there, we entered into his room by like 2 o'clock, and he was speaking while he was doing puja. And then he stopped his puja, and then he sat down, and for 3.5 hours, he was just speaking about, Krishna. And I remember the story, what he said about the gopis, we know the story that, when Krishna was having headache, and Narada Muni, he collect the dust. Krishna said that if you get the dust from the devotees, then my headache will go away. And when Narada Muni, he went to many places, but he couldn't get the dust. But when he came to Vraj, all the gopis, they gave the dust of their feet. So he was telling that story. So when I entered into Aindra Prabhu's room, my leg, hit some place. And when I hit it, I saw that it was a mud. So I saw the whole room, it was covered with cow dung. And I was, the tears were coming from my eyes like anything, even though I was a young girl, and the tears were floating from my eyes. And Aindra was just looking at me and speaking. And really that day was like I gave my heart to Aindra Prabhu from that day. And when after 5:30, Aindra said, now I have to do my puja, and then I have to go downstairs also to do the kirtan. So we all three came out, and then he gave prasad, and he said to my father that ladies are not allowed, so please, Mataji should not come. But really, every birthday from that day, every birthday of Aindra Prabhu, we used to go in his room late at night with my father and my mother and our whole family, and then we used to go and celebrate his birthday. The first birthday which we celebrated, that was our house. So how was it? My father, he didn't say to Aindra Prabhu that today is your birthday, we are going to celebrate it. But he just said to Aindra Prabhu that you come to our house, today's, we want to do kirtan with you. So Aindra, he came to our house. So it was late, very late. Of course, Bhagavad Prana Prabhu came, Bhakta Gray came. So we had a cake, like milk cake. It was decorated as cake style, and then we had magical, candles. Yeah, we had magical candles. So we burned, Aindra, he lit it, and after that he was smiling and he was saying, no, Dwakanath Prabhu, I don't do this. But then my father, he was insisting him that please do it. And so then he blew the candles, but because it was magical, so they lit up again. And Aindra was thinking that I just blow them, and how come they pop up again? So then he was laughing like anything, and then again he blowed it, and then again they come up. So he was laughing. So that was his first birthday, which we celebrated in our house. And then later on, of course, we were celebrating. So it was really nice with him. And then he came to my brother's wedding. Because of the first invitation, we gave it to him. And then he came to my brother's wedding. So when my brother, he was sitting in a horse, this is like Indian tradition, that the boys, they sit in the horse. So while my brother was sitting in a horse and then having the full dress, dressed up nicely, so he said to my brother, king for a day and slave for a life. At the time of a marriage, he was saying king for a day and slave for a life. But he stayed there for like half an hour or so, and then he saw the varmalas, the garland exchanging and all these things. So he was very much intimate with us, and then he used to come to our house and spend time with us. And he really because of him, that was only him, that we are here in Vrindavan Dham, and we know what is Vrindavan Dham and what is... Actually, I used to say to Aindra Prabhu that I have never seen Radhe Shyam, I have never seen Krishna Balaram, no Gaur Nitai, not even Shad Goswamis, not even what to speak, not even Prabhupada. I never see anyone. But because I have seen you, that's why everyone exists. Because I know you only. And this is really true that from that time till today, I belong to him only. He is my master. He is my everything. He has given me a lot. How he came first to our house. Actually, we were living in Agra. Just 2 minutes more. So we were living in Agra, and he really wants us to come to Vrindavan Dham. So the first time, the day when we came to Vrindavan Dham, of course, my father said to him that now we completely moved to Vrindavan. And my father, he went. So Aindra Prabhu said that, okay, Dwakanath Prabhu, you don't say anything to your family members. I will come today and to your house. So we don't know that Aindra is coming today to our house. It was, I think, December. So what happened that it was 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Someone knocked the door, and we were thinking that, of course, my father is knocking the gate. So I opened the gate, and as I opened the gate, it was, and actually what happened that Aindra said to my father that you just be aside. So when I opened the gate, I just saw Aindra Prabhu, and I was stuck. I was like, I opened my hands, and I was like, oh my God, that's Aindra. How come he came this time? And Aindra was just laughing. And then my mother was thinking that what's, how come Preeti, who is there? She was just kept on saying, who is there? Who is there? It's 10 o'clock at night, who is there? And she came and she saw Aindra, and she was also like stunned completely. Then my brothers, they were like, oh, Aindra Prabhu, and he was just laughing and laughing and laughing. So that was like, and my father was saying, okay, let Aindra come in. This is only, we are all standing at thresholds. Let him come. And then you can, you can greet him. And so, that's how he came to our house the very first time. Thank you very much, Aindra Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Time is fleeting and so temporary, and you see life as a journey of the soul rather than a temporary struggle to survive in the material body. Attachments are temporary, and these material lives are short. These bodies are interchangeable and do not represent who we truly are. After so many lifetimes, so many bodies, the traveling soul seeks for one thing, which is truth and love of God. It sometimes takes a million lifetimes to find this truth, but surely every soul will find it. So when this soul finally made its way into the hands of truth and knowledge, there was no turning back. I met another soul, one far greater, more powerful, and ever so pure. Aindra Prabhu. I simply pray to value the gifts you have bestowed upon me to be able to nourish our own desire to become worthy servants and representatives of Srila Prabhupada as you always taught us. I will always see you in Vrindavan as you have left a trail of dust from your lotus feet, which illuminates our conflicted hearts. I can only humbly pray at your lotus feet that you will lover of Krishna, one of his very own. Aindra Prabhu, pulse of my broken heart. Let me not sink and disappear in the depths of labor. Let me fill in with the infinity of your love. Tati Janme Kori Asha Chale Zuri. Of your holy feet in every word I may take. Your servant, Radha Krishna Das.